If y'all watched Professor Black Truth's Moment of Truth, which I'm sure most of you did, you already know what I'm about to talk about. I believe Harvey did a video, and I think Lisa Cabrera did a video on this as well. So I'm not about to give my perspective about this situation involving actor Richard Dreyfuss, who basically put his foot in his mouth yet again. I think the last time I did a video about Richard Dreyfuss, it was almost on the same kind of tone and talking point that he's giving right now. So I'm not shocked, nor am I surprised at what left his mouth. But basically what happened is Richard Dreyfuss did an interview in which he basically called out the Oscars, or the Motion Picture Academy, in saying that, you know, they have these new diversity requirements. I keep telling y'all that word diversity is like PC's kryptonite. They hate not only the word, but also the action as well. Depending on where they go with the diversity thing, I have some issues with it too, but none like how they do, especially Richard Dreyfuss. So he basically said in so many words that this new diversity thing that the Oscars is about to implement makes him want to vomit. So let's see what Richard was talking about. Oscar-winning actor Richard Dreyfuss issued some criticism for the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences new diversity and inclusion standards, saying that the updated requirements for Oscar contention make me vomit. Just reading off that part alone, I already know what's making him mad. You got to think, Richard Dreyfuss is a person who's been acting probably since like the 70s at least. So how things were back then is way different than now. The landscape is way different. Dreyfuss' comments came during a wide-ranging interview on PBS Firing Lane with Margaret Hoover, in which the actor discussed civics education in the United States, partisan discourse in the Academy's Diversity Inclusion Initiative. It's an art. No one should be telling me as an artist that I have to give in to the latest, most current idea of what morality is. What are we risking? Are we really risking hurting people's feelings? You can't legislate that, Dreyfuss told Hoover. You have to let life be life. I'm sorry, I don't think there is a minority or majority in the country that has to be catered to like that. Richard Dreyfuss, have you looked at yourself in the mirror? You are a part of a majority society that's been catered to since inception. I mean, the straight delusion of it all. The 4 new diversity and inclusion standards were first announced in 2020. They will be instituted for the upcoming 2024 Academy Awards, with 2 of the 4 needing to be fulfilled for a valid submission for Best Picture. The 4 standards are described as expanding on-screen representation, themes or narrative, expanding representation among creative leadership and department heads, providing industry access and opportunities to underrepresented demographics, and expanding representation in audience and development. See, at the time when Richard Dreyfuss was in this prime of his career, which, like I said, was like back in the 70s, they didn't have to require all of that because Hollywood was lily white for the most part. Why do you think the blaxploitation era, while very short-lived, existed? Dreyfuss's comments continued with the defense of Laurence Olivier's performance in the 1965 feature Othello, in which the English actor played the Shakespeare lead in blackface. He played a black man brilliantly. Am I being told that I will never have a chance to play a black man? Is someone else being told that if they're not Jewish, they shouldn't play in The Merchant of Venice? Are we crazy? Dreyfuss stated. This is so patronizing, it's so thoughtless, and treating people like children. Let's go back to the part where he says, am I being told that I will never have a chance to play a black man? My thing is, why would you want to? I know this is probably like a tongue-in-cheek, sarcastic type of thing that he's saying, but we ain't gonna let that comment slide. Richard Dreyfuss, why would you want to play a black man? Because that'll give you an opportunity to say the N-word on screen, possibly? I don't know. Possibly. Then when he says, is someone else being told that if they're not Jewish, they shouldn't play in The Merchant of Venice? Now, I believe, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, that Richard Dreyfuss is part of that community. I believe he is Jewish, if I'm not mistaken. I'm amazed that he even said that like it was nothing, considering that many people in that community would be probably highly pissed off if that was the case. Especially if, depending on who they cast to play that part. Because I'm willing to bet they'll let it slide if it's a white person playing that part and they aren't Jewish. But I'm willing to bet that if it was a non-white person, especially a black person, to play that part, then all hell would probably break loose. And he knows it. Dreyfus's most prominent credits include Jaws, which I barely watched, Close Encounters of a Third Kind, which I never watched, American Graffiti, heard of it, didn't watch, W, didn't watch, and Mr. Holland's Opus, didn't watch that either. So I guess you can say my watch or my viewership for anything that Richard Dreyfuss has been in is pretty much null and void. He won the Academy Award for Best Actor for The Goodbye Girl, which I again never watched. The interview with Dreyfus also touched on renewed efforts to control curriculum and ban certain books in the public schools. If I wanted to watch Jaws, I could just go to the aquarium and see a real life great white shark in person. I think we are cowards. Republicans send their children to schools hoping and praying that their children will come back Republicans, and Democrats send their children to school urgently praying that their children come back Democrats. Why did he have to throw politics in there? That's the one thing that pisses me off when it comes to PC and bringing up certain topics. Why do you always have to insert politics in there as far as political parties go? Let me read that again. Republicans send their children to schools hoping and praying that their children will come back Republicans, and Democrats send their children to school urgently praying that their children come back Democrats. My thing is this: their children, why would they have politics on their brain? They can't even vote. This guy isn't, you know what, let me continue. I'm almost done. The idea that a parent would walk into a public school and say, I don't want my children exposed to opposing views, that's wrong. I guess he was using the Democrat Republican thing as a euphemism for something much more broad. Well, in that case, since he wants to put it out on the table, he should have actually said that instead of saying Republican and Democrat, because again, these are minor children. They cannot vote. By the time they're eligible to vote, they'll already be out of high school. But yeah, like I said, I'm not surprised by Richard Dreyfuss saying these things, especially when he was talking about a person who played Othello, which is like the only, as far as I know, Shakespearean piece that has a black lead. As we all know, Shakespeare made plays where the leads and the supporting cast were white, and Othello was black. One of the, like, I think his first and only, a black man. And the person that played it was in blackface. Richard Dreyfuss literally said out of his own mouth that this person played it brilliantly. He said he played a black man brilliantly. So imagine that. A white man praising another white man for playing a black man brilliantly. I'm willing to bet he probably wishes he could go back to those times. He probably thought that Robert Downey Jr. played a black man brilliantly in that movie Tropic Thunder. That's a little bit more recent, which tells me Richard Dreyfuss has nothing wrong or sees that there's nothing wrong with blackface. This guy literally told on himself in a multitude of ways. But again, I'm not surprised by his comments. I'm not even shocked in the slightest bit. I think really what it boils down to is that nobody is checking for Richard Dreyfuss anymore. He's pretty much washed up. No, like, people will know who he is, based on his films, but no one's really checking for him, and he doesn't know when it's time to check out. And I'm talking about maybe out of the industry. His time has run its course, and now he's just babbling at this point, and he's upset. Because, like I said, that word diversity is like their kryptonite. They are scared to death of that word. Not only when it comes to the workplace or in a working environment, but also just life in general. I keep referring back to that that Nat Geo cover that came out in 2008 that said that this is what the world, what America will typically look like come 2050. And here we are in 2023. And they still, for some, have not received yet what's really happening, what's going on. Oh, well, I guess it will hit them like a bag of bricks. If life doesn't hit them sooner, I guess the physicality definitely will.